Good day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan Battle video. In this video we are going to take a look at the Dragon Ball Fusions 2 or the second Dragon Ball Fusions Extreme Z battle area. So this is the Dragon Ball Fusions Edition 2. Which is interesting, I guess, for them to just basically put a 2 there, but this is for 5 additional Dragon Ball Fusions units in the form of Whirus, Chiaoman, Cellza, Coolieza or Coolieza, and Janembu, and so it's a pretty interesting one. The fusion category is the effective category here, and only the tech type fusions will be dropping off of the effective category typings. Everyone else will remain there, and you get 1 stone per stage, plus you get 4 physical Kais, 2 strength Kais, 2 int Kais, and you will also be receiving 2 tech Kais as well. And yeah, it looks pretty cool. Obviously, it's always cool to get some easy A's, especially for some more niche characters. But for people who've got Chiaoman, or Coolieza, or Whirus, or Cellza, or Janembu, you know, they all look pretty decent. They look like really nice awakenings, something that can really help out, especially, you know, for fusion-based teams, etc. But we'll take a look at the units when we can. Obviously, it's a lot of Kais, and I don't unfortunately have them. Still working on the first batch of fusions units, but we should be able to see Whirus at least. And I also have Coolie coming out as well. So we'll be able to take a look at them over time. They are very good units, but they are very niche. There's not a lot of categories to these units. So if you are a new player, I mean, it's great, but I wouldn't actually... I wouldn't actually be surprised if there's, you know, not really any direct need to awaken these guys. So yeah, couple missions as well, mainly just for awakening each unit. You get a stone if you awaken them all to step 7, which is pretty cool. And yeah, that's about it. So fusion is the effective category. In terms of the fusion team, you have a pretty decent selection of free-to-play units, not the absolute best selection. You are able to use the physical Yamahan that you can get from the Dragon Ball Fusions Extreme Z area. He's a pretty good pickup. There's also the Strength Gogeta, there's the Int Gotenks and Ghost, and that's probably it in terms of units that I would utilize. Veku is okay, especially in the Coolieza situation, but I wouldn't necessarily favor any of the other units necessarily. I think, yeah, those are pretty much the 3 I would utilize. You can pick up units like Strength Gogeta and Strength Gotenks with red tickets and that at big celebrations, so I'm going to be using those because a lot of people will have them. And in terms of lead, I'm going to be using the AGL Gogeta, who's probably the, well, I wouldn't say he's the weakest fusion lead, but he's probably not the most recent. And yeah, so this should be a fairly free-to-play team, or at least a free enough basis to build upon. The physical Gogeta does perfectly fine. The physical Goku and Vegeta Angel unit do perfectly fine in the entire stage, even when facing Coolieza, who's a strength unit. And the strength phase does come quite early on. So for the most part, I would probably just say if you do have the 3rd year anniversary LR, you can just use them as your lead. It's probably for the best. And that's really about it. So yeah, as you can see, the first stage against Chiaoman went off perfectly fine. The stages will rotate every 6 stages, so you will get a new character. So we'll be doing that. We'll just jump in whenever that character changes and discuss if there's been any changes in the team or in the difficulty of the stage. So yeah, pretty straightforward though. But yeah, obviously this now we are fighting the Coolieza. I believe it is pronounced, although I am horrendously butchering it probably. But yeah, we are fighting them, so pretty straightforward. Obviously they are a strength type, so if you are concerned about your strength based unit or your physical based units, you can switch in. But this team does perfectly fine the whole way through, so honestly there's really nothing to comment on. The strength Gogeta is going to drop off the first. He's pretty much the weakest. We're not even activating his full passive, so he is by far the weakest, and I would suggest if you are utilizing him, you definitely need to have him rainbowed. Otherwise I would just say switch him out, because he's just not great. Beyond that, I think, you know, in general, the rest of the units do perfectly fine. The int Gotenks and Ghost holds up pretty nicely, and they're a good source of healing. The strength Gogeta Super Saiyan is pretty good. The strength Super Gogeta, he's pretty good. His defense falls off near the end, but Whirus does come back in, and you do finish on a physical type. So he does fine. In the midsection, he takes a little bit more damage than I'd like, but he's nothing to get you killed. And so yeah, pretty straightforward. Obviously, now we are on to Cellza. As we can see here, he's immune to stunning and reduction of defense. No typings have been pushed back or anything. Cellza isn't in type and is arguably the easiest phase, since if you just use the physical friendly Gogeta, and most people will have 100% one, it basically just solo kills Cellza. So probably the easiest portion of the event. You can actually utilize these Dragon Ball Fusions units if you want to as the units for your team, because, you know, as you're upgrading them, similarly with the last one where crossover category units was the weakness, as you are slowly easying the units, they will improve with their stats, passives, etc. So you can actually just use the Easy Aid Fusions or the in progress Easy Aid Fusions if you need to flesh out your categories or anything. But generally speaking, if you have played the game long enough to be able to Easy Aid these units, unless you are a brand new player who has randomly, sporadically decided to summon on the Dragon Ball Fusions banner that's currently out, you should have enough to really get through this stage. But there are some good free-to-play options to help, which is kind of what we're showing off here. Again, the friend physical Gogeta is going to pretty much guarantee the victory, so there's not really anything more you need to do barring than get them to set up with the orbs and they'll basically eliminate him. So yeah, as you can see, pretty straightforward. In terms of Cellza, nothing else too much. It does start lowering your defense on super attack, which can be kind of annoying, especially if you get that super attack on a weaker unit. But again, not really something that should like kill you. I was auto battling in between obviously the filming and everything, just to save myself some admin, and yeah, basically even with just auto battling without even changing things, the team basically got through perfectly fine. So on to Janembu here. And he is now immune to ceiling, attack and defense reduction and stunning. He's also a tech type, which makes him technically our hardest typing to counteract, at least with our current team. But you can, of course, utilize great units like int SS4 Gogeta and int Super Gogeta as well. They'll do great with reducing damage from his attacks. Plus the int Ghost Tanks is still a really good pickup. So yeah, obviously Janembu looks like a pretty cool unit as well. Just he has guard abilities and evasion abilities, obviously all stemming from his Janembu portion, and some regen abilities stemming from his Boo portion. So he looks like a cool unit overall. In our current team, we obviously don't have a lot to you know, take on his tech Extreme Z battle type, so we're relying a little bit on crits and things like that to try and get the damage to an acceptable level. But yeah, realistically speaking, again, really not too concerned, if I'm entirely honest. The whole, like, you know, construction and understanding is that for the most part, unless you are bringing in like a Veku, for example, that is a unit and you haven't put any orbs in him or anything like that, and you bring him in here, he could definitely get you killed. But yeah, units like the AGL Gogeta that we're using as a lead, they don't really struggle. They're not really at risk of dying from Janembu. They of course take some damage, but you're not really at risk of dying from a super or anything like that. So for the most part, the event itself is pretty straightforward. I didn't really have any issues whatsoever in terms of running this event, and so for me, I think this team works fine, and if you can build something similar to this team, you shouldn't really struggle too much. The only shame really is that they don't give you a lot of Kais. Obviously these units don't have farmable super attacks. There's no farmable Whirus that you can find, you know, so it is a little bit challenging when you have so many damn you know, like units that you need to use Kais for to raise their super attacks. It can be a bit draining, but it is what it is. Now we're at stage 30, and here we're facing Whirus. Obviously this is good for our team, and especially for strength. Gogeta is probably our weakest unit, since we now have a lot of type favorable matchups on, which is super great. You can of course switch out Ghost Tanks, but he holds up perfectly fine, so there's no real need to switch him out. But if you want to, you can switch him out. There's plenty of decent strength fusion options out there. Although actually, that being said, I think it's probably the most limited fusion typing overall. So maybe in terms of strength fusion typing, there isn't as many as I would think. And so yeah, it is probably the more difficult typing. I mean, in terms of strength, you could use the Goten from earlier, the Goten that you get with chocolates, and you could use Barlot, I guess, if you do have them. But it does seem to be a little bit limited. I guess your best bet would be to use the LR, you know, Gogeta, the movie one, or maybe even Coolieza or Coolieza himself. Probably is your best bet, because at least at that stage you will have some strength typing and they can really help you out. But yeah, I guess there is a little bit of a deficit in terms of good strength options, but the LR unit will help you out quite a bit, so I wouldn't see it as too big of an issue. But yeah, overall I think the final stage is pretty easy. I think it's not really designed to be challenging, you know, it is designed to be achievable, because obviously, you know, they although quite powerful, they are quite niche units, units that either A, not a lot of people will have, or B, a lot of people probably won't be interested in, and so being able to get some stones for it is always going to be great. And some Kais if you plan on using them for these units, like myself, which is also great. But yeah, for the most part, honestly, not really that big an issue. You can see there we took 133k on a Rainbow LR from a type neutral, which is like decent damage, but yeah, really not like huge damage, especially considering physical LR Gogeta's defense is not absolutely huge. We took 11k on a normal against an in-type unit, so yeah, pretty straightforward. But that's it, that's the final stage done. So after that you should have all the medals you need to awaken the unit, or you will have at least completed all of the stone portions of the event, so that's pretty cool as well. Just in terms of the event itself, obviously again, you could possibly farm it, I guess, which is okay. It's something you could farm, but to be honest, it is a little bit difficult, because, yeah, just you're farming Whirus, but again, the strength typing issue of fusions units pops up. And then in terms of the Kais, as you can see, you get a couple Kais. It's 4 physical ones, 2 strength, 2 int, and 2 tech, and that is how many Kais that you get. But you're going to need those because they all require Kais. But that's it from me, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like on it. Otherwise, leave a comment and I'll answer your questions or queries. And as always, take care, stay safe, and bye.